Oh, okay, sorry. My house is a little bit of a mess, so excuse the stuff in the background. I don't really have like a staging area or a nice backdrop area. So I've got to figure something out for the future, but I'm in my kitchen at the moment, and this is where the best lighting is, and I've got some natural light here. So hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm still learning how to do all this, so bear with me. But for those of you that don't know, my name is Kaitlyn, and this YouTube channel is dedicated to my journey to my second kidney transplant and all the ups and downs that go with it. But I wanted to do an introduction video to introduce myself personally a little bit, but also tell you how I was diagnosed and everything that's happened from then on till now, so you kind of get a bigger picture of what's going on here. So anyway, like I said, my name is Kaitlyn. I am 27 years old, and I am married. My husband's name is Justin. He's Indian. We met in college. We've been together for over 6 years, and got married in August 2019, so married a little over a year and a half now. But we've been together for a long time. So we actually got married where we met at college, the University of Maryland College Park. We went back and got married at their chapel, and it was a really great day. So it was really special to go back to where it all started. We have 2 puppy dogs. They're both rescues. One's a lab mix, one's a pit bull. No kids yet, hopefully in the future. And we just bought our first home this past August, a townhome, and we absolutely love it. It's beautiful here. And my husband's much closer to his work. He's a police officer, and I am working towards being a registered nurse. I currently am a nursing assistant, and I am 1 year into nursing school, but because of my lovely kidney disease, it likes to interfere with that. So I'm on a leave of absence at the moment until I feel better and I can finish. Because I want to be able to give 100% focus to nursing school, because it's no joke. It's super hard. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life, next to dealing with my health. So my goal is to eventually be a nurse practitioner. I'm not just going to stop at getting my BSN, which is my bachelor's in nursing. I do want to go on and get a master's and become a nurse practitioner. As much as I love working in the hospital, I don't want to do it forever, and I would like to have like a 9 to 5 kind of job where I work at a clinic or a doctor's office instead of 3 12-hour shifts. It's a lot. So that's the goal. But I wanted to start with when I was diagnosed. So in February 2013, I was officially diagnosed with end-stage renal disease, kidney disease basically. And that was, we figured that out because, you know, I was in my sophomore year. I was 19, that fall semester of my sophomore year. I was not doing so well in school, and I'm not an A student, but I'm a good student. I get decent grades, you know, I do really well, I do my work. And I just was exhausted all the time. I kept sleeping through classes and I wouldn't get up and go. And I was also having a lot of dizzy spells. You know, like when you get up too fast, sometimes your head spins a little bit, but this was happening on a more frequent basis, and it was just it was a little bit more than just feeling a little dizzy from getting up too fast. So when I went home on winter break for the holidays, I saw my pediatrician at the time, because I was still pretty young, and had a physical, and you know, she did some labs, and my blood counts came back a little low. They weren't like significantly low. It wasn't like too much cause for alarm, but she suspected I might have anemia, which would make sense about the exhaustion and the dizzy spells. So I was referred to a hematologist, which is a blood doctor, and he ran his own set of labs, and he was the one that checked my kidney function, and he actually had me come back a second time to do the lab because he couldn't believe that my kidney function was so poor. He wanted to make sure that the lab results were correct. So. And I don't remember that conversation in that doctor's office. I came back for the second visit. He never said what was wrong. He just said, I want to repeat a lab. And so I came back and repeated the lab, and they ran it in his office. And he came into the room, and I was talking to my parents and I don't remember anything. The only words I remember coming out of his mouth is, I'm admitting you for observation for the weekend, because his office was connected to a hospital. He said, I'm admitting you for the weekend because I don't know if your kidneys are failing right at this moment all of a sudden, or if this was happening chronically, meaning over a long period of time. And I was devastated. I started bawling. Like, I had no idea what was going on. Just everything was a blur. But once I finally calmed down and everything was explained to me, I started to understand, like, the gravity of the situation. And you know, after that weekend of observation, they realized it had been happening for a long period of time. They did some tests. They never could figure out what was wrong or why my kidneys failed. All they know is when I was a little girl, I had a lot of urinary tract infections. And I had at one point a kidney infection when I was 7. Now, I went to Children's Hospital when I was 2. They ran all sorts of tests to make sure everything was working properly, and they could never find anything abnormal. So, you know, there was technically nothing really wrong with me, but they couldn't figure out why I kept having so many UTIs. But after the age of 7 or 8, I stopped having them, and I was fine. You know, I never had any issues. And then, you know, come when I'm 19 years old in college is when I started having all these symptoms. So their best guess is that all the UTIs and the kidney infection I had as a little girl did some scarring on the kidneys, and the function just deteriorated over time, and we had no idea. Kidney disease is a silent disease until it's too late, and so that's why it's super important to always get your physicals and to get checked out if you suspect anything is wrong, you know. It's super important to get checked out yearly by your doctor because it's one of those diseases where you don't know anything's wrong until it's really wrong, you know. So they gave me an official diagnosis for their best guess, and the term, it's abbreviated to FSGS, but what it stands for is focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. Essentially, a fancy word for meaning scarring of the kidneys. So, like I said, that's their best guess. And so my stepmom, my bonus mom, she had a family member that she knew worked for Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, which is a phenomenal transplant center. It's known around the country. And they were able to get me an appointment with one of the nephrologists, which is a kidney doctor, fairly quickly. And, you know, she did her own evaluation and decided I needed a kidney transplant. And so we started that process in like April 2013, and by October 2013, I had my first transplant. I ended up going into the paired exchange program. Basically, that's where you have a living donor willing to donate for you, but they're not a direct match towards you. So they donate on your behalf to somebody else on the list they match with, and then that recipient's donor matches with me, and they donate to me. So it's a swap. So there was an uncle and a niece in Georgia. The uncle needed a kidney, and the niece wanted to donate. However, the niece wasn't a perfect match to her uncle. So they entered the paired exchange just like my grandmother and I. My grandmother was a match, but they wanted a little bit of a younger kidney for me. So my grandmother ended up matching to the uncle, and so she donated to the uncle, and the niece ended up matching to me, and she donated her kidney to me. So our kidneys flew back and forth from Baltimore to Georgia, and we all had our transplants the same day. So it's pretty cool what technology can do these days. So that's how that works. And, you know, there was a couple hiccups, but for the most part, my transplant was doing very well for the first 6 years. And we fast forward to January 2019. That's when things started to go wrong. I had a UTI that I was unaware of, and for the most part, I never know that I have a UTI because I don't feel or have the symptoms. I'm asymptomatic. Well, the UTI got so bad because I didn't know I had one that it turned into a kidney infection. And the only reason I knew I had something wrong was because I was peeing blood. And I went to the ER immediately, and I work at the hospital that I went to. And they ran a bunch of tests and realized that I had the kidney infection. And when you have an organ transplant, you're not supposed to have an immune system. You take immunosuppressants, medications that suppress it, because you have to trick your body into thinking that it's your organ that you were born with. Otherwise, it will reject the organ. So, you know, my body technically was doing its job. It woke up its immune system and tried to fight the infection. However, I can't have an immune system because of my transplant. So it started to reject the transplant as well. I spent a week at my local hospital and then also a week at Johns Hopkins transplant unit to try to save the kidney, and unfortunately we were not successful. I remained stable for about 1.5 years. I technically was in stage 3 kidney disease at the time, but I was stable for a while, for about 1.5 years. And then towards the beginning of summer last year in 2020, like May 2020, my symptoms were starting to get worse. I was getting tired, not having much energy, just kind of how things were before. And my nephrologist said, okay, it's time. We need to start the process for a second transplant. So we got that ball rolling. And I got listed by September on the deceased donor list, but also in the paired exchange. My mother is going to donate on my behalf. She's not a direct match. Unfortunately, after you have a transplant, you develop a significant amount of antibodies, which make it a very difficult match to find. So for example, you're assigned a score. So let's say you were assigned a score of 20%. That means you have antibodies to 20% of the population in the US, meaning there's 80% of the population out there that could potentially match to you. So it's not a difficult match, you know, you'll be able to find something pretty easily, pretty quickly. My score was 99%, meaning there was only 1% in the population that I could match with all the antibodies that I have. So we knew it was going to be done. And so I was panicking a little bit because we're in the middle of a pandemic and my shortness of breath was lasting 3 weeks, but I didn't have COVID, but we didn't know what was going on. And you know, I was about to take my first nursing exam for that semester. I wasn't doing that well anyway because I was so sick for those 3 weeks. Like I wasn't sleeping. I hadn't slept in 4 days. I couldn't study. I couldn't eat. Like I couldn't focus. But I sat down to take my exam that morning at like 8 a.m. and I got a text from my kidney doctor. I think you should go to the ER and get checked out, especially your heart, because maybe there's fluid around it and that's why you're having trouble breathing. So of course I'm panicking. I whipped through the exam. I of course failed it, and I went straight to the ER after the exam, and turns out I was experiencing heart failure. Basically, and they called it stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Basically, because my kidneys weren't working, my organs were taking on the stress, my other organs, and so my heart was taking on a lot of the stress and went into some minor heart failure. The squeeze or the pump of the heart wasn't right, and it wasn't working as it should have been. So they ran a bunch of tests. I got transferred to Hopkins, and they immediately placed a chest port to start emergent dialysis the following day. The heart failure reversed itself. Luckily for that type of condition, it usually reverses itself once you take that stress off the organ. But that's how I started hemodialysis. So I spent almost a week at Hopkins, getting acclimated to dialysis, getting the chest port put in, getting my blood pressure straightened out, just kind of evening things out and get my heart under control. Started some new medications. They got me stable, essentially. So I transferred to my local clinic where I live, my dialysis clinic, and started hemodialysis. I was going 3 days a week for 3.5 hours. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I would go in the afternoon around 3 p.m. and I was miserable. It's such a harsh dialysis, and I'm such a sensitive person. I'm sensitive to a lot of things, but my blood pressure would drop. I would have migraines the entire time, every single treatment. I'd be exhausted. I'd be dizzy. I'd be down for the count. I would sleep for 2 days after treatment. And I felt like I couldn't go anywhere on my own for fear of passing out. I almost did a couple times at Walmart. And my husband had to come get me because I refused to pass out or make a scene. I was so worried about making a scene that, you know, I would sit down whatever aisle I was in and wait for him to come get me because I couldn't walk out or drive alone. So it was just physically taxing and exhausting on me. So it was pushed on me to do peritoneal dialysis because I could do it from home while I was sleeping in the comfort of my own bed, and I wouldn't have to be stuck at a clinic. The only thing is I'd have to have surgery to have the port placed in my abdomen. So I did that. In November, I had a abdominal catheter placed in my abdomen to do peritoneal dialysis at home. And so the port was placed in November by a vascular surgeon, and I went to go have it flushed the following week after surgery by the dialysis nurse, and it would not flush. So I had to have a second surgery where they repositioned the port to try to get it to work, and that happened the day before New Year's Eve. And apparently it was wrapped up in some scar tissue, but they were able to unwrap it and reposition it. After New Year's, they had it flushed and it started working. I proceeded with my training for peritoneal dialysis. It's a week's worth of training to learn how to administer the dialysis, learn about the solutions, all the supplies, learn how to use the machine. It's a lot, it's overwhelming, but once you learn it, you get the hang of it. So I did a week's worth of training, and I had a home visit to make sure everything that was set up right, and I had a clean home. I did dialysis at home on my own for 2 weeks, and then started experiencing complications again. I had blood coming out of the catheter, and I was having a lot of pain that was not normal for this type of dialysis. And so my vascular surgeon and I agreed to do a second revision, which happened on March 1st. And I went back to hemodialysis during that time because I still had my chest port in. And that was rough for sure. I hate hemodialysis. I didn't feel good on it. So I had the surgery March 1st. He repositioned it. About a day and a half later, I went to the ER for having an extreme amount of pain, more than normal, just having some minor post-op complications. They got my pain under control. The catheter was working, and I did dialysis in the hospital while I was there. Everything was working very well. So I went home, and I've been doing peritoneal dialysis for about a month since. In between, we've just been waiting for Hopkins to find me a match. There was 4 kidney offers that happened between December and February. Unfortunately, every single one of them was canceled within 24 to 48 hours, either due to something happening or somebody backing out in the chain. And it can get a pretty lengthy chain. You can have multiple pairs in the swap program. Like, it all gets kind of crazy and mingled. But ultimately, I matched with the same donor every single time. It was just somebody else in the chain that was messing it up. And finally, the last offer in February, my donor backed out and was no longer able to donate a kidney anymore because of a medical condition preventing them from donating an organ at all. So, and that's all the information they give you. Obviously, you got to protect people's privacy. You don't want to violate HIPAA violation laws. So it's been kind of devastating. I haven't had the best of luck lately, but that's kind of where we're at the moment. I'm just patiently and anxiously waiting for a match to come up, and hopefully the next one works out. Maybe 5th time will be the charm. And I'll let you guys know if I do find something. I probably won't tell people right away. I'll wait till it gets much, much closer, due for the fact that we've had 4 offers fall through already. And we're a little superstitious. We want to make sure this is it before we go and tell the whole world, because it sucked. We did tell the whole world for one of them that we thought was for sure, and it ended up not being for sure, and had to turn around and tell everybody it was canceled. So it's been a roller coaster for sure. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I hope all that made sense. I know it's a lot of information. If you have questions, I am an open book. I'm going to try to put more content out there this week. I'll explain the differences between the 2 different types of dialysis so you can understand what I'm doing. I'm also going to post an in-depth step-by-step video of me explaining how I set up my dialysis, and I know you guys have been asking for that. I'm going to try to accomplish that tonight for you. So, and again, please bear with me. I'm new to this whole YouTube thing. I've never made YouTube videos before. And so I don't really have the best equipment, but I am trying my best. And if you have any suggestions, definitely let me know, and I will try to do better and do more research on this. So anyway, I just want to say I'm also really blown away by the support. I love you guys. This community that I have found is just amazing. When you're on dialysis, it can be isolating and you can feel alone, and having people to talk to and spread awareness has been the most rewarding thing ever, and I absolutely love it. It helps me mentally to be able to share my story with you guys, and I just love all the support and the sweet messages, and especially the messages where you're saying that my videos helped you or made it seem less scary, or you appreciate me spreading awareness. Like, that means the absolute world. So I love you guys so much, and I really appreciate all the support. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.